What's up, y'all? Welcome to today's live stream. I'm William Shepard, your developer advocate at OneSignal. And today I am joined with a few of my colleagues, and we're going to be introducing some new stuff around transactional messaging. So let me go ahead and switch over so you can see all of the folks. I have with me Ashlyn and Claudio. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Ashlyn, since you're on my left. Go ahead and just tell the audience about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn. I'm a senior product manager at OneSignal. I manage the email team and our SMS team, and I look after all of our products, specifically focusing on email. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about personalizing emails and transactional messages and looking at how, when you're wanting to send a message that's based on an event that's happening in your product or your app or across your customer experience, how you go from making sure that the right message gets sent at the right time to the right person and really hyper personalize your messages.
Next up, we have Claudio. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. He's in another country, so this is a special day for us.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm in the UK actually. I'm a solution engineer here at OneSignal. Been here for a couple of years now. What I primarily do is I help customers or prospects really understand and look at OneSignal when they're looking to see how it works. I uncover that for them. And very much to Ashlyn, I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the personalization feature that we have, how that can be used in some of the use cases we're going to be expecting to be supporting.
All right. So before we jump into it, what I want to show is just a quick preview of what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my screen. Let me get this up. Hopefully, you all can see my screen now. I have here an API client, or a little HTTP client. I'm going to send off a request. Hopefully, it works. It tends to not work when I have people looking, so And let's go to my email and let's just see what just happened. Let me create a new window, bring that over here, and let's go to my email account. And lo and behold, we have a new email that I just received at 12:03, just to prove 12:03 up here. And we have here, thanks for acorns, and we see items purchased 15. We have some numbers and all these other things. Now I want to show something, so I'm going to have to show both of these. Give me one moment to do that. We'll show my entire display, just so that I can show the relation between the request and the result that we have here on the left. You'll notice here that we now have this new property called custom data. We'll get into this a little bit later, but hint, hint, this is the primary thing that we're talking about today. And you'll see here that we have this item, which is an object. And then inside of this item, we have this thing called name. And then it says acorns. And you'll notice that this acorns matches acorns here. And we have count, which matches this count here, 15. We also have a price, and that matches here. So what you're seeing is a template that's being filled in using custom data from a request. That's the primary thing that we're going to be walking through today. So with that, let's kind of take a step back and talk a little bit more about how this came along. So I'm going to pass the baton to you, Ashlyn, to give us a little bit of detail about what this is and why did we do this.
Yeah, so in OneSignal, you can send out both transactional emails and messages and marketing emails and messages. And a little bit of the difference between those two things is a marketing email needs to have an unsubscribe link, and you're typically sending out marketing messages in a campaign. So you would say like, hey, this large segment of users, please, like I want to send you this message about this particular topic. But transactional messages tend to be very specific and based on events that happen across your customer experience. And typically they also do not require an unsubscribe link because they're considered like that you have to have that type of message to deliver the experience that you're offering and the service that you're providing to your customers. And so you don't have to enforce an unsubscribe link to those types of emails. So an example of this is a purchase receipt, which is the email that you see here. And you want to be able to make sure that your purchase receipt is branded and that people across your business can have access to editing the look and feel of that email and be able to update update it if you want to change what's in that email going forwards. And so what you can do is you can make an API call and pass through the data that's going to personalize that message so that when you're sending out that confirmation of purchase and the receipt, that email will contain the right information that's specifically personalized to the order and the purchase that that end customer made.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull up the ACP client just to show that request, just to just make sure that you all can see it. I do understand that it may be a little bit harder to see if you're on a smaller screen, so I just wanted to make it a little bit bigger for you all. So with that, let's talk a little bit about how do we actually do this? How do we get these customized emails and notifications? How do we start?
Yeah, I think we should pull up a template. I think the one of the things that I really love about using OneSignal for managing your transactional messages is because we have a templates page, you can see all templates that exist across your entire customer experience. And there's a list of here's all the messages we actually send to a customer that they might receive at some point in the life cycle of them interacting with our service or using our product. And so this template is the template that's called through that API call. And you can see that we substitute that custom data throughout the message to make sure that it renders the way that we want it to render.
So I'm noticing that we have this little syntax here. Can you give me a little bit of like insight into what this is?
Yeah, so between those two little squiggly brackets, the handlebars, we call this liquid syntax. And liquid syntax is a type of framework for how you substitute data and add logic into messages. It was started by or created by Shopify, and so there is some documentation out there that sits outside of OneSignal on how to use liquid syntax. We support most liquid syntax functionality, but we also in our own docs we have documentation on how to use liquid syntax as well. Maybe we want to pull that up and show people how to find it
Sure thing. Give
real
me
quick.
one moment.
So look, I just wanted to add something to here. The magic of what we're really providing here is for our customers to bring in the transactional messages to a more controlled state where you have this editor that you've just pulled up. I personally have had a lot of experiences where, let's say, some of the verification emails when I start engaging with a new company, that those verification emails were really basic. Had like low in here, a verification link that I clicked in, and then from there, any further emails that I got, like promotional marketing, were a lot more branded and customized. And that quite often is due to the fact that transactional emails have been hard coded to an extent, and they are quite often tucked away from the hands of the marketing persona, the product managers.
When you send a message transactionally, it bypasses the unsubscribe settings of a customer, and that allows like the message, you know that that message is making it into the inbox, regardless of if they unsubscribe from your marketing messages or not. But the thing about having all the templates in one place is it really creates the overview of here's all the messages that we send. And what I see happen a lot in companies is they don't know. If you're not a developer with access to the code base to go and look into all of the messages that get sent, even if you are, you still might not be able to know where to look in the code base to find every message. And so there could be missing messages that you're actually sending to your customers that you just have no clue that you're sending. And to be able to update the look and feel of those messages, review them, maybe they're in plain text and they're not in HTML and there's no branding. It takes a lot of time and it could be like up to a week a message to try to update that and get that through an entire dev process with an engineering team. So using the templates in OneSignal really allows you to control what content is being sent to the customer, and anyone who has access to editing templates in OneSignal can do that. The thing about sending messages through the API is you would still need a developer to say like, hey, here's send this message at this time and here's all the data, but you can define kind of a wider range of data that you want to pass through to each template and be able to update your templates over time based on the data that you know is going to be provided.
Yeah, I think having these templates is really useful, and I think it seems like it reduces the barrier. So if you are a marketer and you want to have a new campaign, you can just do it here, and then you just tell your developers, "Hey, this is the data that I'm expecting," and they will know that they can just send this request off, and it'll automatically happen.
Yeah.
Versus in the past, you have your developers build the entire email, and then it's in code somewhere, which means that most of the time only they can see it, which is not very
Yep.
helpful when it's marketing who's directing like the content in the email in the first place.
Yeah, marketing or ops or an ops team. Yeah, that's exactly correct. And it's kind of crazy because if you're building the email in your, like, if the HTML is in your app in your code base, you're not getting the benefit of all the testing and being able to go and run inbox render testing and knowing if your email is presenting the way you want it to. It gets a little bit more challenging to manage.
Okay, well, I think at this point it's probably a good time to start like playing around with this and seeing the power that we have now. So we've already seen one request. We have here the in-app or the in-game purchase receipt, but we have a few more
Mhm.
email templates that we like to show. So let's first start off with this. Let's first show the template. I'll have either Ashlyn or Claudio walk us through the template, just calling out any things that are, that are important. And I may have questions myself, so be prepared for those. And then what we'll do is we'll actually send off the request to see what happens, and we'll go from there. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Good.
Okay, so the first one that we're going to go over is an abandoned cart. Here is the template, and I'm going to let you all volunteer yourself for who wants to talk about this one. Our fat squirrel
Yeah,
abandoned cart.
yeah, I'll kick it off just a little bit around the scenario. So, the reason why you might want to have an abandoned cart email separate from the abandoned cart push notification or SMS is in the push notification, you'd probably use data tags in one signal to store last item in your cart. And you could send a push notification, but you're limited to like 250 characters. So basically, all you can really say is, there are items still in your cart. You should go back and check it out before and like make sure you purchase those items. But with an email, you have the opportunity of actually creating more of a visual display around what the items were in the cart or be able to do specific call outs or add additional promotions depending on the content of that cart.
Could you give me what are data tags? Explain what those are.
Claudio, do you
Yeah.
I'll pass it to you.
So data tags, first and foremost, is a noun that we use here at One Signal, and for us, it's used to describe what's commonly known as an event or a property on behalf of our customers and users. For instance, this
Mhm.
here, the data tag could be in the form of a property such as a first name or the type of account that the user has. In terms of event, it can also be stored, let's say in the gaming aspect, it could be that the user has just signed up for a competition. That could be stored as an event. Data tags here, of course, are coming in different ways in one signal. And one of the powers that we have is that they're coming in real time. Like we can collect this with the SDK, so directly from the client, or our customers have the ability to also bring them in from the backend using our APIs. But in the context of what we're looking at here, the data tags are used to personalize the email with more static information about the customer. So that's less transient than other information that we're now looking for the custom data.
Hmm. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's things you kind of want to store on the user level in or the subscriber level in one signal. And a data tag is really great for segmenting. So you can have information about a customer and you store it in a data tag and then build segments over that data tag. And so people will move in and out of segments depending on how the data changes that you're storing in that data tag. So you could have like a what plan they're on or what like segment they might be in if they're on a particular type of like have they logged in recently or their last like we store a bunch of information around like when did they put an item in their cart and you could say like they're in this segment because they added an item to their cart like 7 days ago or something like that.
And it sounds like there's the implication that data tags they tend to be shared amongst a bunch of different users. The actual tag itself, so that we can do the segmentation. Is that a correct assumption?
Some can be, but
Yes.
others can be quite individual to the users. But to Ashton's perspective, like when we look at segmentation, then absolutely data tags can be shared across multiple users. For instance, if I want to segment between users who have made more than 10 purchases, then that's a common filter that you see across your users. You might want to do a segment. Really valuable of that is who do you want to send the banned card to? Perhaps to the users who are more likely to continue making repeat purchases, as the conversion rate would be higher.
So can you all kind of compare and contrast data tags and custom data for me?
So for custom data, you have the option of like including a lot of data. And so you can have objects that have arrays that have objects in those arrays that have like you accept a whole JSON object, so you can hold a lot of data and have it better organized. Whereas a data tag is very specific, just a key value pair, so you can really only add one value for each data tag. That's the key. And for custom data, because it's through the API, it allows you to send data that you wouldn't want to store against a user. For example, maybe their password reset URL or like specific things that you might expect to expire over a period of time. And so you can pass through that data. It will be used only for the one notification that you're sending, and then that data isn't stored against that user.
So if I wanted to come up with a rule of thumb for when should I use data tags versus when should I use custom data, what is that?
So looking at the data, how like time sensitive is that data? Because you wouldn't want to upload or update a data tag and then send a message and then change the data tag after sending the message. So that would be like 3 API calls. When with custom data, you can make one. It's also about how you're sending the message. So if you're sending the message as a marketing campaign inside OneSignal dashboard, you don't have access to custom data. You really need to use data tags because that's data is stored against that device or that subscriber that you're sending to. And then if you are using journeys, very similar thing. Because you're using a journey to trigger sending a template, that data needs to be stored against that subscriber. So that would be another good use case to use data tags.
Okay. All right. All right. We were back to our fat scroll template, and let's kind of walk through this. So I see we have an image, which is kind of cool. We can just drag an image here, and it looks like here's our first use of some custom data. So I'm curious, do all custom data, like how do we? Is it just in this message? Is it always message? Are there any other names that we can reference here?
So for using liquid syntax, everything is going to be within the double handlebar for substituting information into that field, or it's going to be a like one squiggly handlebar mustache with a percent sign, and that will perform logic. So for that first thing that you're saying with the double handlebars, you're always for message data, that custom data sent on the API, you're always going to start with message.custom data. And that's how this email knows to go and look at the data sent through that API call on the custom data parameter. And then from there, it's just simple traverse the tree of the JSON object that you sent. So for this particular substitution, it's going to go look at the API call of the message, grab the custom data, look at the cart array, and then count the number of objects in that cart to calculate the size. So the size here is something provided by Liquid Syntax that we can use to count items in an array. And so that's how we can say like we're holding on to 4 items in your cart.
Ah, so does that mean that if we were to send a custom data message with an array of objects, does that mean that we can somehow like iterate through them and like repeat certain pieces of our UI in the email? Is that kind of what we're getting at?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So if you scroll down a bit, you can see in the cart here that that first line underneath your cart. So this is doing a for loop. So it's looking at each product and the that's in the products array. So if we maybe we should go check out the payload that we're sending through.
Sure thing. This is our abandoned cart. So let me pull that one up. Abandoned cart here, and I'm gonna hide some things just to make this a little bit easier. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so we have the cart underneath custom data, we have a cart key with an array that's the value. And within each item in that array, it's an object that contains information about the product in the cart. And so we can loop through this with the for loop and say for products in the array that contains all those products, display this. And so what we're displaying is an image, which looks at the image URL. Then we're displaying the product name, and then we're displaying the quantity, and then we're displaying the price. And then we close that loop, that for loop with the end for. And you always have to remember to close the loop. So to do this in drag and drop editor, we used a paragraph to write the opening of that loop, and then we put all of our content in between it, and then we used another paragraph to write the closing of that loop.
My
This brings up an interesting question or point. So this syntax, it's literally just text, and we interpret it whenever a request comes in. Correct?
Yeah, so at time of send, the we render the email.
So that means that I can do a header. I can do any type of thing that I want, so long as it's in the curly braces.
Can you say that again?
So that means that I can also put it in a header. I can use the H1. I can use anchor tag. I can use li, so long as I use the double curly
Yeah.
brace. Okay.
so
So
just
another thing you can do, oh, go ahead, Claudio.
I was just going to say that my favorite part about this here, certainly from an editor perspective or person who would be looking at managing this, is that they can really minimize the amount of content they put in here and control it. In a sense, you cannot always know how many items user might have in their cart in this example. You could have 20, you could have two. You do not have to account for that extra space. You just put in the logic that we're seeing here on the screen, and then we take the job of looking at what's in the API and then show us either two products or up to 20 products. It really does save time for the marketer to sort of put in, I don't know, a limited placeholder amount of card items that they might want to show, like here's the top 5 items. No, this is a definitive list which is tailored to each end user and how many items they have in their card, just to draw on that example.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ashley.
And the thing I also think is really cool is that we were able to display, if you go to the rendered email, you can see how it's like the image and everything kind of looks like a table. And we were able to display the table of items just by using a row with columns in the drag and drop editor. We didn't have to write any custom HTML to make it render in the view that we wanted to for designing this email.
Okay. So let me go ahead and send this off and see what happens. So we get back
Yeah.
a success.
Tables Tables can be really hard in email to design, to build
Well, I thought
tables.
emails were styled with tables. I thought that's in that it still uses like
It's
1991
all,
tables.
yeah, everything's a table, which makes it a little bit harder to in drag and drop editor sometimes to make tables render the way that this email is rendering. It can be a bit challenging because the columns won't be the right size or they won't be in the right location. And I think that we were able to accomplish a very like clean looking design to render the items just by using our drag and drop editor with custom CSS.
Well, that's definitely a reason to use our editor over creating your own emails and then sending it to us. You're going to have to, I mean, it's computational and you're sending us more data, that's bandwidth, but also styling and,
Yeah.
tables are hard. Well, in any case, here is the email. It does look quite nice, and we see here that we have every item here, and they are in order that they appear, which is nice to know that they are actually in the order that you send them, and it is preserved. Okay. Any
Yeah, and if
other?
you're uncomfortable with the types of ordering or the content, if you have a bigger list, you do have the ability to add what's called a filter in custom data. Maybe we want to go and look at how to use liquid syntax because we have some examples in our docs. But filters allow you to take whatever content would be substituted and filter it to do something like maybe you want to capitalize the letters and make it title case, or maybe you want to make the date a slightly different date format. You can add filters that would randomize the items in that array, or so you can show different items in the cart if you want to make suggestions to people, or you can add a filter that will only show sweaters instead of hats or something similar to that.
Yeah, that's actually really good to know because it's in some cases, because this is JSON, we can always just not include a property. And it's nice to know that if that property doesn't show up, your email won't break. So long as you've thought about it in advance, you put a default value, or you can conditionally render certain pieces of your email with when certain properties exist in your custom data. So it's really nice to know that we thought about that.
Yeah, one of the common things I see for personalizing messages is you actually might have different sentences or content that you display for different segments of your audience. So you could say, like, if someone is on a prepaid plan, they're going to get this content versus if someone is on a auto bill plan where they might pay after like 30 days after their bill, you would like display different text, but you could still have the email be like, we send out this email at this event, but then we think about all the target segments and we customize the content of using liquid syntax by saying like, if this data tag is this, send this content, and you can write out the content in the drag and drop editor.
And I think that's a really important point you mentioned there, Ashlyn. We have a lot of customers here at One Signal who sending out emails to an audience of over 10 languages or 20 countries or even more. And very
Mhm.
often the conundrum they have is, do I create multiple emails for each language, for each country that we're in, or do we have a master template, which is certainly as well possible here with the syntax that you can look up. If the user's language of if the user's location is, let's say, in Spain, then show the Spanish version of that message or the currency. So that has certainly saved a lot of time for our existing customers.
Yeah, currency is a good example. Just even just even segmenting, like you might want to just have different language that you tell different people depending on where they're at in your customer life cycle or what journey they're on within your product.
I'm curious. I know we have our block editor, but I'm curious if we're able to do this using the custom HTML editor. Could we also put liquid syntax there?
Oh, of course,
Yeah,
definitely.
you'll be
Everything you see working here will work in the HTML editor. I do recommend that people use our drag and drop editor because it's the most friendly for anyone to edit content, whereas editing content on the HTML editor really limits other people in the business from editing emails that don't have a developer background and can be a bit daunting. But having all of your templates in a drag and drop editor enables really like just gives the power to anyone in your company to edit and change emails over time.
And Will, you do have an example actually here up on the screen. That image under the card, that is a HTML snippet, and there's a little bit of added code in there that sort of suppresses the image that is being shown, put through the API to appear or be contained within the certain width of that column. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, sometimes drag and drop editors can be limited in the functionality that they have, and you can always get around that limitation by using an HTML block in the drag and drop editor to just put in just enough HTML to accomplish the exact thing you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
The other thing you can do is like if you're displaying graphs or charts, you can pass through an entire HTML block of here's all the code for that graph and render that in an HTML block within your email and have that display the way you want to display when you send the email.
It is definitely nice to know that we have provided this escape hatch so that if our editor doesn't provide something that you need, you can still do it and you can still make use of our liquid syntax to use this custom data feature. That's really cool.
Yeah, because other things I'll see, for example, like I see a lot of graphs and people wanting to put charts or graphs or things that are very visual that are really hard to customize within just a drag and drop editor, and they need like a lot of custom CSS and they need the data of that graph. And so they really need to be rendered at the time of sending the email. So you can render that on within your app and just send through just enough HTML to accomplish like putting in that graph. And the downside of rendering things within your app and sending it through the custom data is that, as you can see here, you can't see the image. It just shows up
Yeah.
as an empty image. And so when you're previewing this in the editor state, you won't be able to actually preview what that email would look like. You have to send the email to, you have to render the email by sending it with the API, the way that you're demonstrating how to test it to make sure that it will render properly.
Good, 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 good. All right. So let's go ahead and move forward to the other things that we have to show. So the next one that we have is a verification email. And this is just another use case of using this. And later on, Claudia will likely give other use cases and go into a little bit more detail about this. But I want to take the time to show this. So before I go into this, I want to get into the actual data here. So give me a moment to share the current application. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is how you would enable customization on your end. So you're sending this from your backend server, which means that you have all the data that you need, likely in your database or in all of your other systems. So at the moment, we're putting a verification URL here. We've just put in a placeholder URL. But in reality, what you would do is you would create or you would craft this URL on your backend so that whenever the user clicks it, it's going to perform something, some logic that will then relate the user who just clicked it to the one who you sent that email to. So this right here, even though this is hard coded, this is likely something that you're going to generate on your backend using your user's ID, and you'll probably have logic on your page to handle this. And then the first name, again, this is, you'll likely do lookups to figure out which one of your users you're trying to send stuff to, and you would already have this information, and you would just send it to us. So even though
Yeah,
you're
the
seeing
first
it,
name though could
oh,
also be a data tag. So this is an example of when you could send it through custom data, or you might want to rely on the data tag for the first name that you already have.
oh, for the first name, okay. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, just like it's as an example, it's here, we're passing it through as custom data, but you could also, you might already have that stored as a data tag. And so like you could just rely on the data tag for that.
I have
There's
a second
options.
question. I have another question, and forgive me if this is something that's like you haven't heard this one before. But technically, I can put in as many emails as I want and this include email tokens. And we have this custom data here. So I'm curious, if I were to put your email address as well as Claudio's email address, will we all see the same email?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
so
would.
if you send to a segment or a group of people and you are sending through the API and you're sending custom data, whatever data that you're sending is going to get rendered and that's the email that's going to get sent. So typically in these transactional messages, it's one to one. It's very rare that you would send a one to many transactional message, but it does happen. Like if you're updating your terms and conditions or you have a pricing change, you really want that email to go out and hit every customer regardless of their subscription status, but it would be a generic email. And for that, you can actually use our dashboard where you can take the segment and send out a campaign, like a marketing campaign, but send it transactionally.
Okay, so it seems like the sender should exercise some caution to ensure that they're sending these to who they want to send them to, because we're just going to send it for you. We're enabling it. We're not actually. Okay. All right. Good to know. All right. So let's go ahead and
Yeah,
render
and
out this
the
email. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add point to that caution. If you are sending emails to people and they don't want to receive emails, they might mark you as a spammer and they might do report as spam, and that affects your sending reputation. And if your sending reputation gets too low, you might not be able to actually send your marketing messages, or all your emails might end up in spam, or you might start seeing your emails fail instead of actually being received by your recipient. And so you want to do whatever you can to make sure that your customers actually want to receive the messages and they're expecting to receive the messages that you're sending them and that they're timely.
Interesting. So emails, you get a credit score. That's what it sounds like. You better
Yeah,
make sure
every
you.
sending domain has the equivalent of a credit score.
Yeah, you better make sure you're paying your bills on time. All right. Let's do this. We'll go ahead and send this off, and let's hope and pray that it'll come. Well, yes, it did. So here we are. We get, hey, I'm George today. Apologies. But it says, no, all the information that we have here. And if I click on this, it's just going to take us to our verification link, which is our wonderful website.
Well,
All
why
right.
don't you try changing your name, Will, and put Will as the first name
I'm going to
and
put
send it again
Wilma.
and
I'm
demonstrate?
Wilma today. I've been watching the Flintstones. Wait, is it one? It's,
Okay.
yeah, there we go. Do that.
And so, yeah, this is exactly how you would test your emails, um, is by just sending API calls. You can use, if you're interested in inbox rendering, there are products out there you can use to send the emails to, but you'll want to test the different scenarios that you might see. Like maybe you want to test sending an email with a really long name, or maybe you want to test a scenario where like you have logic if else statements all through your email, and you want to have like if this is true and if this is false. So that's this is kind of how you do it. And if you have trouble sending test API calls, really anyone can do it. Claudio and I like to use our one signal instance of Postman, and everyone has access to this, and you can fork it and send your custom data to your own app and use it to test your transactional messages as well.
I am going to share the link to that Postman thing right now. So if you're watching, feel free, copy that. And I also want to test this to see if it handles like anything, if it's Unicode, or could I, do what I like. So let's see. We'll do that, and let's see if it renders it out properly. Oh, look at that. Okay, so it also supports multiple languages. This is nice to know. All right. Next, we have a new login, which is very similar to all the other ones. So I'll just go ahead and render it out just so we can see what it looks like. And then we can talk a little bit about how you can leverage this feature with your push notifications and SMS, but we won't have time to actually go through and demo it today. But before we go do that, let's verify that we get the new login. And here we are. So we get a new login. So this is actually really cool. So this means that now that instead of me having to try to figure out and figure out what data tags I need for a particular user at the time that I'm going to send them something, I can instead just send all the data that I want and not have to worry about, oh, I need to update the data tag first. And then I can send the email. And then I may have to go and reset the data tags because I only updated it so that I can send the email.
Well,
Yeah.
precisely, Will. But let's not forget that this is giving a choice to our customers now. The data tags is still a very valid way to manage the emails. You can perfectly do a lot of the things that we've demonstrated here as before. just with the addition that, hey, if you want to send data at the point of sending the message, you can do this now. So the preference or the choice has really been expanded. I just want to labor that point.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I have something I'd be keen to show. If we can go back to that
Absolutely.
template.
Yep. Oops. Oh, wait, hold on. Can we go back to that template? Yes, we
And
can.
yeah, yeah, perfect. So you see the subject line here and the pre-header. You can use liquid syntax as well in the subject line and pre-header, but one reason why you might be interested in using data tags is if you click the plus button next to it, we have a filter that allows you to search through the data tags you have set up and select the ones that you want. So if you already have data tags for a name, you could add the subject, hey name, it's time for you to pay your bill or something like that. And this is available and might be a good reason why to use a data tag for a particular thing to make it easier to search for those data tags when writing your subject line and pre-header. But again, all of the functionality works. You can add logic statements in your pre-header and subject line. You can use substitution and use the data that's coming through the API. Basically, anywhere anywhere that accepts liquid syntax, you should be able to use substitution or logic and use data tags or the data you're sending through the API.
So just so that I have
So that
clarity,
works.
if I wanted to use liquid syntax here, I would still do the this thing right here, the double curlies,
Yes,
and then okay, okay,
that's
You,
good to
correct.
you
know.
can. What Ashton's obviously shown here is a handy way for our customers to immediately bring in information, especially when they're looking through a list. If you can bring that up, sort of the plus sign and personalization, that does help some of our customers say, okay, this data has been made available, or I've had this somehow stored before, so I can look that up. Of course, for our viewing audience, that is just a mimic right here. Is all demo data. You're not going to get this. It'll of course be whatever you want to set up. And just to add to this here, on the right-hand side is also a default box. This is some mini logic that we've built in here, which says that if the data, let's say the first name, isn't available for all of my records, then we can default to something. For example, we want to put in the word there or nothing in that sense. So it would either say, hello, Ashlyn, if we have the first name, but if we don't have my first name, it could read, yeah, as you're doing well, it would now show hello there.
I won't insert it because I don't want to
Oh,
accidentally
why don't
mess
you
up
go?
y'all's template.
No,
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 go ahead and insert it. It's
All
fine.
right,
no, it's
this is
it's it's good to see
Yes.
that, and you can see here right away it's already created curly brackets for you. It is rendered neatly, and you can immediately see, hey, here I'm calling the first name, whatever property or event information that we have stored previously.
okay. So let's say, for instance, this wrong, and I was sending this only in custom data. I would do message dot custom data dot first name, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Perfect.
Okay. Now another question, and this just may be my lack of knowledge on liquid syntax, but this looks very much like JavaScript. Does that mean that I can index into objects this way as well using the square bracket notation?
Yes,
Or
you can.
okay,
That's exactly how it works.
okay, perfect. So that means that your key names don't necessarily have to be like camel case. They can be with spaces so long as you use the quotes and you index that way. So let's say, for instance, you already have your system built, and for some reason your key names have spaces in them. This will not preclude you from using your existing system. We can still handle it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. How do I? I'm gonna delete this so I don't mess up anything. I just won't save it. I'm gonna click cancel. I don't want any nasty emails. Okay, I think we've covered all of the things for email. So does this all work the same for push and SMS?
Yep. So it's custom data is accepted on notification endpoint, which is available for all channels that you're trying to send messages on. So yeah, it won't work for live activities, I think, because that's not how live activities work, but it would be available for push and SMS.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'm curious to know: are there any like concluding thoughts or any additional things that you like to share about this particular feature before we start to wind down?
I'll pass it to Claudio.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that the main thing to take away here is that we're adding more choice or more tools into the arsenal of our customers here. Is one. And secondly, I think that's also most important is that this really goes a long way to bridge the practices of having sort of transactional teams or transactional message being siloed out from the marketing persona who control sort of any other promotional seasoning or seasonal other campaigns being delivered.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's all in one place. So you have messages you want to send out. You have the ability to send out your marketing campaigns. You have ability to send out transactional blast messages. You can send one-off transactional messages that cover your entire customer life cycle across all of the channels. You can utilize journeys. You have a lot of opportunity to really target all the different touch points that you'd have for your customer engagement.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Well, then, with that, I want to conclude with just sharing like where you can learn more about how to use this technically. So you can consult our API docs. I'm actually going to share that link in the stream. And what you'll want to look for is this custom data property here, which is going to give you a little bit more information about what you can do. And you'll also notice that there is a little link here that you can click that's going to take you to message personalization, where you can learn more about the feature itself, along with how to use liquid syntax, as well as multi languages, which is what Claudio was mentioning earlier in situations where no, not everyone speaks the same language, believe it or not. So this is helpful for that. So
Mhm.
let me make sure that I also heard something else I was supposed to share.
I
Huh.
think
Well,
that's about it.
it may be it. So what I'll say is this: if you're watching, if you're part of if our developer community in Discord, if you have any further questions, follow ups, just feel free to reach out there. Also, you can reach out to me directly at devrel@onesignal.com if you have questions about this particular feature or if you just have thoughts. So with that, I am done. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch back over to our mugs so that we can give our concluding thoughts. So first of all, I want to say thank you to both Ashlyn and Claudio for joining me today, and also big props to you, Ashlyn. I know that you're over this. This is actually a really compelling feature, and it actually does some things that I think are necessary. I've tried to do transactional emails in the past with data tags. This is easier, in my
It's
opinion.
hard. Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't.
yeah. Thank, thank you so much. Thank you so much for hosting this, Will, or Wilma, should I say?
Hey, I'm. Yeah, we'll go
Um,
with Wilma today. We could be Wilma.
cool. I appreciate being here. It's great to be able to just chat through this, the ability to just like really hyper personalize your communication.
Yes, and also thank you, Claudio, for joining. I know that it's relatively late. It's the end of your day there, so thank you for taking the time to tell us about all these little features and the use cases and all that kind of stuff. It's really nice to know.
Just
Oh,
yeah, thanks for having me. It's not too late here in the UK, as you can see. It's still nice and bright. But
well, I thought. Oh, yeah, I guess it is. Okay. All right. Well, I am going to go ahead and call it. We have no questions, and thank you all again. It was nice having you, and see you later. Peace.
Bye.
hi everyone.